Test-driven development demonstrations that I see go straight into writing the test method, and I think that misses out on an opportunity to take advantage of one of the practices that Kent Beck talks about in TDD by example, and that is the test list. The test list allows you to just stay a little bit more in flow, and I think it also helps us with maintaining certain disciplines. But I'm just going to do a version of the FizzBuzz kata just to show you what I mean about using a test list. I'm not going to do the full FizzBuzz kata where it actually counts out 1, 2, fizz, 4, buzz and so on. I'm just going to do the part where it determines if it should just give you back the number as a string or if it should give you back fizz, buzz or FizzBuzz. I'm going to do a test list, and that test list I'm going to write in a particular way, and the reason for me doing it this particular way will become apparent a little bit further on in a few minutes, so hold tight for that. But what we're going to do is we're going to start with the most basic example of 1 should give you back 1. So this is the input, this is the expected result. Now I always like to have 2 examples because the first example is the one that's going to drive you to do a naive implementation, and the second example is going to cause you to generalize. 3 would be the first instance of us having a fizz, and the second example of that will be a 6. Our first buzz would be 5, and we'll have a second example of that, and then finally fizz, and then one more example for that, and that will be thus. So let's just get into it and work our way through. Got to do a couple of tests in a slightly different way. Let's just do it like that for now. And I'm going to take inspiration from an approach called TDD as if you meant it from Keith Braithwaite. So I'm actually just going to put in the example here. Now, if you want to know more about TDD as if you meant it, go search for it. Keith Braithwaite. I attended an exercise that he did with this once, and it was just eye-opening for me. And ever since, I've found that it has influenced how I actually go about TDD in its entirety. But look, we're going to go, and that's how we're going to get the first test to pass for now. Okay, great. So let's move on to the next one, and I'm going to do the same approach again. Make it run, and then make it pass. Okay, and the reason for doing that is because, okay, you've now got the implementation in the test, you've got some clear duplication, and it makes you think, well, how do I want to actually represent this? Now, in the case of Kotlin, I can have extension methods, and I quite like the bit where I've gone to string there, so I want to keep that, but I'm going to make it FizzBuzzed. Now, there's not an easy way to extract a extension method using IntelliJ, so I'm just doing it this way because I think this is the easiest way to do it, and it'll be this dot to string, and that should still pass. And if it does, I can now do that. But now I've got duplication in my test, so I'm going to actually remove that as well. So name equals take the first parameter, should be the expected result, should be the second parameter. Right, there we go. And for that to work, we're going to need a function, and I'm going to call that FizzBuzzer for now. And we take an input, which is the int, and the expected, which will be a string. And here I'll just put expected, and I'm just going to put the input as that for now, and that will become apparent in a moment. Now I'm going to take advantage of the CSV source, which will be borrowed from here. That's why I wrote it that way, just to make it easy to actually use. So we should have 2 failing tests and 2 passing tests. the original tests that are passing, I can now go here and just go, there we go, and that should give me one passing test, and now I should be able to do that, and that should give me two passing tests. Now I can trust the parameterized tests, and I can lose these old ones. Obviously on every green normally I would be doing a commit, but that's not the point of today's exercise, so I'm not doing that for today. Okay, so now I can get back into flow now that I've finished my refactorings and go down here and say, okay, well, okay, let's make it fizz for the first time. Again, simple, this is equal to 3, then we should have fizz, else it should be keeping the other test pass. Right, okay, next example of fizz, which will force us into generalizing that. So now I can buy 3, I should make that pass. Great, now we should go into the buzz stage. Now I look at it, I just think I don't really like what that's going to make me do next, so I'm going to put it back. I'm going to make a hard change easy, then I'm going to make the easy change, but I'm not going to jump ahead. I'm just going to do that. Okay, and then the next bit should be passing. Next example, that will force my generalization. Okay, so now we've got some duplication here. I don't really like, if I just go, like, the duplication is basically there. I don't really want that. So what I want to do is I want to replace that with is divisible by, and we don't need that anymore, and let's make an extension function that takes the divisor and gives us a boolean, return. There you go, it's figured out what I wanted to achieve next, and when we run that, that should all nicely done. Okay, so now we've got our first FizzBuzz example, and that will force us to then go, this is equal to 15. And you think, oh yeah, why not just, you know, duplicate it, but then we won't have a test that will fail if someone messes up the rule. Not fuzzed. There we go. My good friend Ivan Moore will be shouting at me as to why didn't I just copy and paste it, that way I couldn't make a mistake. And now finally onto our final example. We've now completed the entire test list. We've got our failing test, and I know that we can now do that, and finally it's passing. So look, what I found is when I was going through that process, because I'd taken the time to just put my head in the mode of thinking about what are the different examples, I was able to just go through those scenarios quite quickly. And then once I then was working off of that checklist of things to work through, I also was able to then take advantage of using things like the parameterized test, which made keeping in the flow of just writing a test, writing implementation, writing the test, writing implementation. I'd already decided what the scenarios were. It was about realizing those scenarios one at a time. Anyway, just thought some of you might find that interesting. Hopefully you can see the value of using a test list. And if you've got any questions, comments or feedback, please let me know in the comments. This was just a quick video, just something I decided to do and share.